Whenever you're working on this topic, it's really important to figure out exactly what you're reading in the sense that we need to figure out whether we're going to be multiplying or whether we're going to be dividing throughout the problem. So for this problem, it tells us that a construction crew has just finished building a road. The crew worked for 10 days. If they built 2 and 3/4 kilometers of road each day, what is the total length of the road they built? So in this situation, the construction workers are building 2 and 3/4 kilometers of road every single day for 10 days. Because they're doing this every day, we're going to be multiplying. We're going to be multiplying 2 and 3/4 by 10 days. In order to actually multiply these two numbers together, I would recommend turning both of these into improper fractions, in the sense that right now we have a mixed number here, 2 and 3/4. To turn it into an improper fraction, we multiply the 2 by 4, that would give us an 8, and we add the 3 to it. 8 plus 3 gives me 11. So this fraction becomes 11 over 4. We keep the same denominator as before. So we have 2 and 3/4 becoming 11 over 4, and all we need to do now is turn the 10 into a fraction. How do you turn 10 into a fraction? All you need to do is put it over a 1. So this is really what the problem wants us to do, and we can go ahead and multiply the numbers. Now you can do this either by multiplying left to right, which would be 11 times 10 and then 4 times 1. Or you can simplify the diagonals first, which I always recommend. And what I mean by that is I look at these two numbers here and see if I can simplify 11 over 1 as a fraction. In this case, 11 over 1 can't really be simplified or broken down any further, but 10 and 4 can be simplified. So if we think of that as 10 over 4, what number goes into both 10 and 4? That would be a 2. How many times does the 2 go into a 10? The 2 goes into the 10 5 times, and the 2 goes into the 4 2 times. So now we're left with 11 times 5 in the numerator and 2 times 1 in the denominator. 11 times 5 is 55. 2 times 1 gives us a 2. Now we're left with a fraction that can't be simplified any further because we had already simplified the diagonals. So it makes the problem a little bit easier to solve. So even though this isn't wrong necessarily, the problem does want us to write it as a mixed number. So what we need to do now is turn this improper fraction into a mixed number. The way to do that is by actually doing the division. This is a fraction, but this is really 55 divided by 2. So how many times does 2 go into 55? Well, the long way to do it would be to take 55 and divide it by 2. In this case, this might be the best way to do it. So 2 goes into 5 2 times. That gives us with 4. 5 minus 4 gives us a 1, and we bring the 5 down. 2 goes into 15 7 times. And 2 times 7 is 14, so we subtract them. And we're left with a remainder of 1. So 2 goes into 55 27 entire times, and we're left with a remainder of 1. So this 27 is going to have a 1 over, we were dividing by the number 2. So we're left with 27 and 1/2 as our final answer. So this is the mixed number version of this improper fraction that we had earlier. Because the problem is asking for a mixed number, this would be my answer. This problem tells us that a farmer's land is separated into sections of size 2 1/5 acres. Suppose there are 2 7/9 such sections. How many acres of land does the farmer own? So they're telling us that there are 2 7/9 sections that have a size of 2 1/5. That means that they're going to be multiplied. Now, in many of these problems, there's no keywords that necessarily give it away. You kind of have to logically think through the process. So in this case, there's 2 7/9 sections, and each of these sections consists of 2 1/5 acres. So they're going to be multiplied. And just like the previous problem, we want to go ahead and turn both of these mixed numbers into improper fractions. To do that, we take the whole number, we multiply it by the denominator. 2 times 9 gives us 18, plus 7 gives us 25. So we have 25 over 9 for the first fraction. For the second fraction, we do it the same way. 2 times 5 gives us 10, plus 1 gives us 11. So now we have our problem set up properly, and we can go ahead and either try this the lazy way, which is just multiplying left to right and simplifying the answer, or to save us a little bit of time, we can try simplifying the diagonals, and that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to look at 25 and 5, and notice that the number 5 fits into both of these values. 5 goes into 25 5 times, and 5 goes into itself, or 5 goes into 5 1 time. So we're done with those diagonals. If we look at this other one, we have a 9 and 11. There's no number that fits into both 9 and 11, or there's no number that divides into both of those perfectly. So we're going to leave those numbers alone. And we're going to go ahead and do the multiplication from left to right. So 5 times 11 gives me 55, and 9 times 1 gives me 9. While this is an answer, the problem does want us to write it in terms of a mixed number. So in order to get this mixed number, we need to actually do the division. We need to figure out how many times 9 goes into the number 55. Well, 9 times 5 is 45. 9 times 6 would be 54. So if we do this, if we do 9 times 6, we would get 54, and we'd be left with a remainder of 1. That means that our mixed number would be 6, and our remainder of 1 out of the 9 that we were originally dividing by. So 6 and 1/9 would be the final answer. This problem tells us that a shipment of 9 tons of sugar is separated into containers of equal size. So they're taking the sugar and they're splitting it up, which means they're dividing it. If the shipment fills 5 1/4 containers, how much sugar can one container hold? So they're taking 9 tons and they're splitting this up, or they're dividing this up into 5 1/4 containers. You could make the argument that the word separated refers to division, and it does, but not all the problems are going to use these words. Anyways, this is our setup. And anytime we're working with mixed numbers, I always feel like it's a good idea to turn them into improper fractions. So turn this 9 into a fraction just by placing it over a 1. We still have a division sign, but we need to turn this 5 1/4 into a fraction. So we multiply the whole number with the denominator. 5 times 4 gives us 20, plus 1 gives us 21. So we're left with 21 over 4. Now it's just a matter of dividing fractions. And in case you need a quick review of that, whenever you divide a fraction, we actually change that to multiplication. So we literally change this division sign to a multiplication. The left side, the left number, in this case 9 over 1, that stays the same. But the fraction on the right side, this 21 over 4, we're going to take its reciprocal, which means we literally flip it around. So it's 4 over 21 instead of 21 over 4. Now that we changed the division to multiplication and we flip the second fraction around, we can go ahead and multiply these fractions together. So just like before, the lazy way of doing this is by multiplying from left to right. But what I always recommend doing is trying to simplify the diagonals first. So if we look at the diagonals, we'll notice that we have 9 and 21. And we can simplify that if it were a fraction. What number goes into both 9 and 21? That number would be 3. Now, how many times does 3 go into 9? Well, 3 goes into 9 3 times. And 3 goes into 21 7 times. So we simplify 9 and 21 to become 3 and 7. If we tried the other diagonals, 1 and 4, you can't simplify that any further. So you would leave those alone. Now that we simplified the diagonals, we multiply the numbers from left to right. 3 times 4 gives us 12, and 1 times 7 gives us 7. So this is our answer in terms of a improper fraction, but the problem does want us to turn it into a mixed number. So the last thing we do is actually divide these two values. how many times does 7 go into 12? Well, it only goes into 12 one entire time. And what's the remainder? That would be a 5. So 5 out of those 7 values. So what I really did there was I took 12 and I divided it by 7. 7 goes into 12 one time. 7 times 1 is 7. We subtract those and I got that remainder of 5, which went into my numerator. A construction crew has just finished building a road. The road is 6 1/4 kilometers long. If the crew worked for 5 days, how many kilometers of road did they build each day? Assume they built the same amount each day. So in this problem, there's a construction crew, and they build a road that's 6 1/4 kilometers long. So this is how big the road is, or how long the road is. It took the crew 5 days to do this. So we're dividing this by 5 to figure out how much of the road they actually built per day. So this is my setup. Now I need to turn everything into an improper fraction. To turn this first one into an improper fraction, we do 6 times 4. That's 24 plus 1 is 25. So we have 25 over 4. We're going to keep the division sign there for now, and we're just going to go ahead and turn the 5 into a fraction. To turn any whole number into a fraction, you simply place it over a 1. So that was the first step, is to turn all of the values that we have into a fraction, an improper fraction. Now, since it's a division problem, we need to change it to multiplication and take the reciprocal of the second fraction, or flip that second fraction around. So that's what we do here, and that first fraction always remains the same. Now we can work this out like any other problem. I would simplify the diagonals first. So I would simplify 25 over 5. And I noticed that the number 5 goes into both of those values. The number 5 goes into 25 5 times. And that same number, the 5, goes into 5 one time. If I look at the other diagonals, we have 1 and 4, and we can't simplify that any further. So we have 5 times 1 for the numerator, and 4 times 1 in the denominator. So we're almost done. The last thing that we need to do is turn this value, turn this improper fraction, back into a mixed number. So we need to do the division. This is 5 divided by 4. So 4 goes into the number 5 one entire time, and we're left with a remainder of 1 out of those 4. So the final answer is 1 1/4. And just like the last problem, what I did here, what I did as the last step, is I literally divided 5 by 4, because that's what this fraction represents. 4 goes into 5 one entire time, and if I finish dividing these numbers, 4 times 1 is 4, I subtract that from 5, and I get a remainder of 1. So we're left with 1 and 1 out of 4.